All right, guys, welcome in. It is Thursday. It is time for Full Court Press. We hit our parlay yesterday, a two-teamer. Rob, put ourselves back in the plus. I had UCLA. You had the over at NC State. I think this is the second time this year, Rob, where your best player got scratched and the team scored like 120 points or something like that. You had Texas Tech earlier this year where they didn't start three guys and still just effortlessly put up triple digits. So shout out to us for that. Wish I added UCLA to my client card, kicking myself for that, but it's a new day and there's new games to talk about. Before we get into it, as people file in, how'd your night go? How's the week going so far for you, Rob?
The college basketball has been terrific client-wise, Adam. 9-2, last 11. I think it's 67%, 16-8 since the start of the month. So it's been good here in December. Interesting that Will Wade, and I did post this on X, his press conference after the game last night, after they scored 108, just saying Will Wade thinks his team has no toughness. He's got two players who actually care. Not happy with the overall attitude, or let's just say, a mild-mannered attitude of his team. He wants tougher guys. We'll see if this affects them in ACC play, Adam, because when you play ACC, everybody's going to come out with a toughness attitude, and if NC State doesn't have the players to counter that, we're going to see if he can develop this team or not, but he was none too pleased after last night's win. I was, but he wasn't.
Yeah, I think he has a right to be concerned about the effort on the defensive end. Sometimes I wonder if this is going to be a new school tactic here where, because back in the day, you didn't coaches didn't really come out and bury their players, bury their team. It was very rare. It was always I've got to do better. But more often than not, it was coach takes the ownership, deflects away from the players. And I see, we talked about it yesterday. The Mick Cronin just goes out and is we have no heart. We're not tough. We suck at basketball. Comes out, wins by 13, did it last year, got UCLA sort of out of that rut, and then they started winning games. So you got to wonder, too, a guy like Will Wade, who seems to be pretty much respected across the game. Cronin does, too. I'm sure, listen, you know how it's some things you hear, with my Long Island, New York City-based friends, I hear this all the time. It's they can say something, and if I tried to say the same thing, it wouldn't fly. Do you think that's kind of like that in coaching a little bit?
It could very well be. I like what you were saying earlier about these coaches that have no issue with throwing players under the bus. Tad Boyle is another one at Colorado who has zero problem 2-3 times a year ripping his Colorado team. Like you say, we talked about Cronin yesterday. Seems to be a little bit of a thing. This instance, I just think it's Will Wade being Will Wade. It's who he is. It's he has this desire, Adam, a burning desire to be on top of the coaching world. And so NC State is his opportunity here, at least. They did make a Final Four a couple of years ago, so who knows? You could do that. But, I don't know. It's just some coaches, every coach is different, but those three in particular have no problem. And here's a comment about Penny from Keith. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point this out. I think it's a great comment. It's a good discussion to get into as we people file in, and we'll get to the games. Plenty of games to talk about today. But, yesterday I was talking about Penny upping him in my book in terms of coaching, because I used to not really care for him as a head coach from an X's and O's standpoint, but talked about how respected he is, how he always has his team ready to play. And then last night they go out in what was a bad matchup for them and take Vandy to overtime. They end up covering. It should have never been that tough for them to cover 7.5. But Bayou says, Penny said he started docking Bradshaw NIL fines for being late, et cetera, before he started showing effort recently. I like the tactic. If players are getting paid, they should be able to pay fines. Yeah, and it just goes back to how respected Penny is in that community. Not even just the college, right? The Memphis community in general. Whereas I almost feel like I have to start handicapping coaches more than their coaching acumen at this point, because that's the game we're playing now with NIL. Red Autry last night looking like a joke in the press conference, stuff like that, where you got to be upgrade, downgrade. And it's very actionable because, it is the identity of the team. Yeah, I mean, just like, again, we could go on all day, but I thought it was an interesting point, and great effort by Memphis last night. That was one.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to get blown out, and they took that game to overtime. All right, feature game. Oh, Jarhead, I'll answer this question. Why is the video vertically stacked for some shows? I can't see any comments. You got to go find the other link. So WagerTalk is putting a vertical show out, which probably formats better to your phone. And the show is also up in the traditional format. On YouTube, it's two separate links. I believe if you're watching on Twitter or one of the other platforms, it is going to be the horizontal format. So that is, that's why you're seeing it like that. We are producing two formats now. So you must be watching the vertical format. Go to the WagerTalk YouTube page. You should be able to find the horizontal one as well. Rob, I talked to you before the show. No real feature game today. It's sort of a mid-finals week slate, a lot of mid-majors. The only real power conference schools are playing bye games. So I decided that the feature game was going to be the one of the only nationally televised games today. And we're going to go to the Chris Paul HBCU Classic down in College Park, Georgia, where the Atlanta Dream play. And this is a 5 p.m. Eastern game. And I decided to make this game a feature because, as Rothstein likes to say, standalone game, right? It's a standalone. It's national TV. And I also have an opinion here, and I'm actually going to end up being on the wrong. Something I've talked about is I've beaten a lot of line moves, and right now it looks to be on the wrong side of a line move, which, again, as we've talked about, also hasn't meant much. This year, I feel like I continue to beat numbers, and it continues to not matter. I took 7 with Jackson State in this one. It's up to 8.5. Now, something we have also covered on this show repeatedly is that may come back down throughout the day. This actually opened like 6, so I thought I was buying back at the fake already, but it looks like this has been sort of bet up to 8.5 some places. This is a neutral court game. College Park, Georgia. This is an HBCU MTE. So you're going to see these two teams play today, and then you're going to see them play a different opponent tomorrow. I expect this to be a well-attended event. You've got Division II schools are going to play earlier in the day. So it's basically games all day. And then the Division I games are the national TV ones on ESPNU at 5 and 7:30. I guess the reason I wanted to play against Hampton, I guess I wanted to play Jackson State here. I'll start with the Jackson State side. They're 1-9, but majority of their games have been bye games, right? Like where they're just not going to compete with the likes of Louisville and Illinois, a Houston, a Northwestern. Those are just teams that they're not going to hang around with. And I think they're getting a little too penalized here, Rob, for the fact that they have been blasted in these games. So it's like they've lost some of these games by 40 or 50 points. And I think the books and the masses will look at that and say, well, you should have been closer. And I look at that and say, does it really matter that they only lost? Like, would it have been better that they only lost by 25 as opposed to 40 to Illinois? To me, it doesn't really mean much. The games that mean something, in my opinion, for Jackson State are the handful of games they've played against sort of somewhat like competition. But I'm going to throw out the Winthrop game because Deshaun Ruffin did not play against Winthrop. And not only he's one of the best players in the SWAC. Of course, Ruffin comes from Ole Miss. There was a point in time, Rob, where I think he was a pretty highly touted, freshman at Ole Miss, transfers to Jackson State. He's probably one of the top 5 players in this league. He's certainly the best player on Jackson State's roster. He didn't play against Winthrop, so I'll throw that game out. So I'm looking at the Louisiana game, the Kennesaw State game, and the Louisiana Tech game. They win against Louisiana on the road as an underdog right in the same sort of, I think they were a 6-point dog in that game. The other two, losing to Kennesaw, losing to Louisiana Tech, those are two very good teams in their own respect, also in bigger conferences. So I looked at Jackson State. I said, man, this is a team I thought might win the SWAC this year. Like they're in that upper echelon of SWAC teams. They're 1-9. This is a neutral court. It's not at Hampton. It's neutral court in Atlanta. To me, like I like what Yvonne Thomas has done at Hampton. but I don't know that I can make them 7 points better on a neutral. So talk to me a little bit about the Hampton side. I know you kind of like maybe lean that way. I'm surprised that this is up to 8.5 now. I just don't understand that move.
Yeah, the degree of difficulty, Adam, when trying to actually place where a SWAC team is at this point in time, because we've harped on this a lot. It came into play again last night in my analysis yesterday morning of the Texas Southern NC State matchup, right? They just go out and they play these ridiculously hard schedules. You can't take a single thing statistically, analytically that's attached to Jackson State right now and get a gauge on what kind of team they are. Their stats are so skewed by the beatings that they take that you really don't even know who they are. It's usually why I would wait till SWAC season to play on any SWAC side. Last night I chose to go with a team total against the SWAC team because they just give up a lot of points to Power 5 schools, but this is not that situation. So at face value, Hampton has played far more teams in this weight class than has Jackson State. Does it mean much? I'm not sure. They generally, I'm going to speak from a team total perspective right now, 72.5 is the number attached to Hampton. They generally in this weight class have been able to exceed that number. They didn't against Holy Cross, and they didn't against Norfolk State. The Norfolk State one catches my eye a little bit simply because you get that type of rivalry atmosphere in games between HBCUs. And maybe we get that here. But on the other hand, Mo Williams has always been an up-tempo coach, was an up-tempo player. He's an up-tempo coach. Jackson State, again, you can't take a lot of what their statistics say to heart here, but they are giving up very, very short average possession length times, second fastest in the nation. Every team that they played that blew them out was not a fast-paced team. I think Hampton might pick up the pace a little bit here. Whether or not they can cover 7.5 is another question. But getting to 73 in this game, I think you'll see a much better effort out of Jackson State here because, again, we say it all the time, but they're in that range where they can be far more competitive. And I think Hampton just at this point in time might have a little better personnel and better results. So if I were to look, I would look at Hampton's team total getting over, Adam. But all that being said, it's a huge opportunity for Jackson State to finally score some points. This isn't the Houston Cougar defense they're going to be facing. So
right.
65.5 on their end could get over as well. I won't play, but I would leave the audience with potential full game total over. It's been bet up from 136 to 139. Seems like money likes that line of thinking, or the Hampton team. And you know what? As we talk about this game here, Adam, I see 8.5s almost universally now. It just keeps flying.
Yeah. And again, I've prided myself on at the very least, even though I haven't had a great start to college basketball season, I've gotten the best number or a really good number probably 19 times out of 20. I can't, this hasn't happened to me very often this season where I've just gotten one shoved in my face like I'm getting right here with Jackson State. With that being said, if this is just some group decided that they were going to head to the extra board and bet Hampton, because that ultimately will move some of these extra board games, right? Like if it was a main board game, I'd be far more concerned about an injury. But like when it's an extra board game, if a group decides to all bet at once, they will move a game multiple points on the extra board. I would have absolutely no problem taking the 8.5 with as much confidence as I did when I punched in +7 for clients for 3% earlier today. The only thing that would put me off of Jackson State would be if Deshaun Ruffin for some reason didn't play. I think that's very unlikely here for a couple of reasons. One, this is like a huge game for them. It's national TV. It's this whole event, right? This HBCU college, Chris Paul HBCU Classic. Like, unless he's like randomly hurt, like he's not just going to miss this game. So again, I think this is probably a group took a position when limits went up. I will happily punch back against that. And I'm going to use whatever the number is on this show by the time we're done as my parlay leg. So we'll just call it 8.5 with Jackson State. Ruffin is this team offensively. So like, I don't even care who else is on the floor with him. He is the offensive, like, sort of identity of this team. And the last couple games, so ever since, I think he may have either, I think he was like maybe disciplinary suspended. I have to like double check that, but he missed the Winthrop game, and then he didn't really play much against Arkansas. Since then, he's been on a mission. 20 points against Northwestern last time out. He had 28 against Kennesaw. He had 18 in the win over Louisiana. And like, having a back, like, Houston's going to take your best player out, even if you're Duke, right? Like, Houston will wipe out your best player. It doesn't matter who you are. So the fact that he didn't do much against Houston's irrelevant to me. This is going to be a great atmosphere. I think this is going to be a great game. Even if Jackson State doesn't win, which we don't care, we just want them to keep it close. I'm not sure Hampton's got the juice to just run them out of the gym. It's a better Hampton team with Avon Thomas than it was prior to him showing up there. But still, like, I don't know that they're an 8-point favorite on a neutral over Jackson State. So I like the dog. And that will be my parlay leg for the show. I'm going to take 8.5. Looks like, 8.5 is pretty much across the board now. So we'll take Jackson State plus 8.5. I played it for clients for 3% at 7. So it's a rare time where I'm actually giving out a better number on the show. All right. Wow. That was a hot start here. I didn't know we were going to go that in detail with Jackson State Hampton, but great way to start the show. I'm going to head to the comments, and let's go to Jose. This one. This is an interesting team. Interesting, like, some line movement here. And he says, William and Mary for me, especially at home, where, of course, our colleague Steve Merrill will probably be in attendance. He goes to a lot of these William and Mary home games. That's his school. I think he has great seats. He's told me to come down before. I haven't made it down there for a game yet. I will at some point. You want to talk about coaches, Rob? Brian Earl was up here at Cornell all those years. He's now down there. My gut says he's going to overachieve every year because that's just the kind of coach he is. And I feel like you're seeing that with William and Mary. Are you laying it against Radford with the Tribe tonight?
I don't know if I would lay 8, but I would certainly. And obviously the money is the same way. They were attracted to that opening total of 165. It's now 172.5. You're going to get two of the faster tempo teams in the country. Obviously, Brian Earl's team. William and Mary has had this identity for a few years now of up and down, high scoring affairs. You combine them with a team that does the same, and you're likely to get somewhere near this number. William and Mary, not really interested in a whole lot of defense, but certainly interested and capable on the offensive end. And now Radford taking on that same type of identity themselves. So I think it's going to be up and down, Adam. I really want to look at the William and Mary side. Their team total here up and over. Haven't really played it yet, but it's something that interests me quite a bit. You're going to get the huge number of possessions that I always talk about. William and Mary, for what it's worth, the fastest offensive tempo team in the nation. They get shots up extremely quickly, every 13 and a half seconds, according to Ken Palm. The other side gets one off every 15 and a half seconds. So 13 and 15. You got Greyhound basketball here. You get free throws in those instances. If I could just go through a couple of Radford finals here real quick. Radford has been either on the good side or on the bad side of 80 plus every single game this year. So they can score it. They can allow it. My trust in this game would be on the William and Mary side. Certainly way more tested. They've played a little bit better competition here, and their offense, just the possession numbers in their game, I'm just going through real quick: 78, 76, 74, 79, 77, 78. Everything here adds up to some form of over. For me, and maybe at the conclusion of the show, I'll look this way, but for me, William and Mary team total over here, and I think you have to get to 91 to win that bet. I think that's probably a fairly safe way to go in this case. It is 90.5 at this point. So we'll see. It's like I say, that total regular full game total has really flown up 7.5 points.
Amazingly, we are in Brian Earl's second season, and it's like they still haven't fully adjusted to him being the coach there from a totals perspective. If you go back to last year, like every William and Mary total was slammed over like all season, right? Because the previous regime did not play even remotely that fast. It literally took like a full season for them to adjust. And it almost feels like it's happening again this year, where they came into the year and their totals were a little bit lower than they should have been. And this one is no exception, up from, I think, 165 to 172.5. Keith makes a great point in the chat. William and Mary's only played 3 home games so far this year. It is a game that might have some juice. Radford is I think I've said this on air here, that Radford, if there was going to be a team that maybe pushes High Point in the Big South, I thought it could be Radford this year. Now Radford's come in, they play a lot of games that they're going to play superior competition. So they're another one. 5-7 might be a little bit misleading. They had believe they knocked off someone, or maybe they played. I think they played someone pretty tight. That was played UNC to 15 points. That SMU game, I bet them in that game. That was much closer than the final score suggests there. They were right in it with SMU for a lot of the game, ended up losing by 17. Last 2 times out against these, the scenario where they're actually the superior team, against St. Francis and Coppin State, 89 points and 107. So Radford can put the ball in the hoop too. I don't hate an overlook there, but after the move, maybe you do go the team total route and focus on William and Mary, because they're going to probably score at will here. All right, let's okay, Doug, I'll talk about what's going on in this game. So Doug says, what's going on with Furman minus 10.5 at Manhattan? I get that Manhattan is bottom tier, but my numbers only project Furman -4. So there's a couple of things I think that you have to acknowledge with the number in Furman Manhattan. The first thing is I've noticed that a lot of projections on Manhattan have been off this year. And the reason for that is Will Sidnor has yet to play a game. So I know through some of my MAC sources that Sidnor was essentially academically ineligible for the first semester. That's why he hasn't stepped foot on the floor yet this year. I don't know if they've come out and officially said that, but that is why he has not stepped foot on the court yet this year. He's been academically ineligible. Now, that's a problem for Manhattan, Rob, because that is not only Manhattan's best player, he will be in the mix for MAC Player of the Year if he plays the whole MAC season, or if he gets back and gets in with eligibility in the second semester. Now, December 18th, my math says this is still the first semester. I don't think you can we don't hear about this as much as we used to, because it's like, I don't know. I feel like academic ineligibility used to be a thing, and it was like you knew that they weren't coming back until early January. Like there was no way to get out of it. You have to get the final grades in and then make sure your grades are up to be reinstated to the team. So A, you're not going to see him here. B, I think it's the reason that the metrics are so off on Manhattan. On the other side, Rob, Furman, I think a lot of people had Furman as like a runaway in their league to win their league this year. And they came out looking so bad that the number was all out of whack on Furman too. And that's starting to fix itself, because Furman has now won 6 of their last 7 games. They blew out Elon. They blew out Harvard. They beat Richmond. They crushed Queens. They're starting to look like the team that I think most people had at the top of the SoCon this year. So I'm just trying to make sense of your question about the number. I think that's why the number's out of whack on this game for you, because there's like a lot of moving parts with both of these teams. From a handicapping perspective, because of that, I don't really have much interest in getting involved in this game. I don't really want any part of Manhattan until they get Sidnor back, because I haven't been overly impressed with them without him. So that's my take there, Rob. Do you have anything more actionable than I have on this Furman Manhattan game?
I will just say, Adam, that the 3 games that you just rattled off where Furman blew out, and blew out, those victories were by 9, 10, and 11. So they're double-digit victories, but then we put it up against a 10.5-point number here against Manhattan. And honestly, Furman may be a little bit, the runaway train may have gone too far at this point in time. I would prefer to look at an under here for the one specific reason that, and Will Sidnor, who you've brought up quite a bit, is probably a main reason why, but Manhattan hasn't really reached any offensive goals here. You know what I mean? They're not a very good. We talked about them in the Fairfield game. As a matter of fact, I think I took Fairfield that night plus 2.5, and Manhattan did win that game by 4 at home, but low scoring game. Most of the stuff they've played, they don't show the capability to get to, they're going to need to get to 75 here. Probably you need an 85, 75 game or in that vicinity, 80, 75. I'm just not so sure they get there. So I think that angle is correct here. 156.5 bet down to 154.5. I think that's correct. As far as side is concerned, I would start maybe looking at Manhattan here. We talk about weird road trips too. And this is kind of, I know Furman plays in small gyms, but this is kind of a strange one in Manhattan for anybody who hasn't been there before. I don't know that that Furman's been to Manhattan before without looking up the results.
Have you been to Dratty Gym before, Rob? It's been there forever. Forever.
Those gyms in the city are tough.
Yeah. It has been there forever. I think they still have the track around it, the indoor track. Very cool building in I can't remember what part of the city it's in. I think they're in like Riverdale, maybe like closer to the Bronx. But yeah, that is a very cool little like old gym that's been there for a long time. And that is a weird trip for Furman to have to go out there. One other thing I'll say about Manhattan, like the problem for them is they have no depth. They didn't have any depth last year. Like they really only want to play 7 guys. But when you play 7 guys, and one of your guys is a potential conference player of the year, and then you no longer have him, it's tough, right? And that's what you're seeing with this team. They have, guys, Jaden Winston, Devin Dinkins, the guys that start the game for Manhattan are very, very good. But the problem is 5 through 7, normally it's like 6 through 10 are not very good, and you have to put them in places. But now that you haven't had Sidnor, one of those guys has had to start, and there is a big drop off for Manhattan after their starting 5. Huge drop off. So it makes it tough. Like that. That's why a couple things. One, they're not able to, Furman, their big issue earlier in the year was they were turning the ball over left and right. I think they've cleaned up some of that. They have a tremendous coach. Bob Ritchie's going to figure that out. He's one of the better coaches in that league. So I think you've got a couple things here where Manhattan's really missed Sidnor. It's thrown off everything they've wanted to do. Furman got off to this horrific start, and now they're starting to round into form a little bit. But I'm with you, Rob. I think at this number, I think it's moved a little too much. I could only look Manhattan here because they still have some talent. They can still put the ball in the hoop. And at home, if they're into it, Furman will turn it over. Maybe that keeps you in the game if you're the Jaspers.
Yeah, and a couple things just to tie it up here, Adam, real quick. 2020 hindsight is always the answer to this question. Furman's had 9 days off. And I know maybe you practice a little bit, but as you mentioned, it's been finals week for a lot of these universities. So 9 days off, the question of rest versus rust always comes into play. And Furman hasn't necessarily, they win 3 straight games. 1 against Bob Jones, which we won't consider, but you do beat Elon, you do beat Harvard by decent sized margins. And then you take 9 days off. It's almost as if they were getting some kind of flow going. Now it's broken up. Now it's a weird road trip. These situationals or external angles may play a part in this game here tonight. And while Furman has turned it over a bunch, and I think we could take these numbers to heart because Furman has played a lot of teams inside this Manhattan weight class, that the word we use. They've not forced any turnovers. So you don't get extra possessions with Furman so far this year. You lose a few, you don't gain any. Plus 10.5. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't play the game, but as I talk it through here, it could be a little bit of a lean towards Manhattan plus 10.5. And I think that's the angle that the question was coming from. I can't even remember now, but I think they were looking at Manhattan.
Yeah, no. Well, he was saying his number was closer to 4. And so I was trying, I feel like we kind of did sort of talk that out and maybe validate his number a little bit, right? Like I have to, I kind of stopped making number, like a number for Manhattan games, like, and just trying to sort of read the market and the matchup a little bit, because if I make a number for Manhattan right now, I know it's going to be skewed. And it's like, for me, like Sidnor was so important to that team that it's almost like you have to throw out all priors if he's not out there and try to make it off of what you've seen this year. And I'm always going to, like, if I, that's why I haven't even tried to make a number for that game yet. If I do, it's going to be pro Manhattan. I already know that. So I just would rather wait on that one and see if it gets to a point where it's like, okay, I just have no choice. I have to take Manhattan here. Listen, at 10.5, you're getting pretty close to that point, especially with them playing on their home floor. So yeah, I think on Manhattan or pass there as well. All right, let's go to your neck of the woods, Rob, especially because I threw the sweatshirt on that I got at the NEC final last year, where Central Connecticut State was stunned on their home floor by St. Francis. Everyone in the building, and that's actually where this game is tonight, Dietrich Gym. Have you been to Dietrich Gym before? That's been there forever too.
Yeah, and I was there forever ago. A buddy of mine graduated there in 1983. I was probably in there in 1981.
I would imagine it's probably still the same building. They've
Yeah.
just spruced it up over the years. It's got one of those, like the NEC conference is full of those where it's like you walk in, it's like kind of like walking into a high school. Yeah, this facility opened in 1965, so it was very much there in the early 80s. They've actually done a really nice job in there with some of the suites and stuff that they've put in. But small facility. Reason I want to bring this kind of goes, it's a perfect theme for the show. We started the show talking about coaching. Pat Sellers deserves any job that he wants. Like some team is going to hire Pat Sellers away from Central Connecticut State, probably at the end of this year or very soon. And they are going to get just an absolute stud of a coach. He lost the best player in the conference. Jordan Jones was the best player in the NEC last year. They had such a tremendous team, and he's turned right back around and put what I consider to be, like, I know a lot of people think Long Island was the favorite and is the favorite in the NEC this year, but I'll put Central Connecticut State right up there against them. He's just an awesome coach. They're always prepared. He's found a couple of like D2 diamonds in the rough, and he's going to face cross-state rival Fairfield tonight, who I think we've noted on this show has been kind of good in these types of games where it's a competitive game. You know, really, we'll use the term weight class again. Fairfield's been pretty good in these types of games. So Fairfield hits the road here. They're catching 3 possessions. Do you have anything in this one? Fairfield, Central Connecticut State, and hard hit in New Britain tonight, Rob Vina.
Hard hit in New Britain. You know, when I first looked at it, I didn't really like the road results of Fairfield and taking to the road here. And I don't know that coming from that state, living there 31 years, I just don't ever remember Fairfield and Central Connecticut being rivals.
No.
They're a little bit apart. So I won't use the word rivalry here, but in-state matchup. A team in Fairfield that brings some things on the road, Adam, that do travel. They don't turn it over and they rebound well. And if you can do those 2 things on the road, you can sometimes survive bad shooting nights, which maybe they could be in for here against it. They're not a good shooting team. They went to Manhattan and could only score 66 points in a 70-66 loss. Central Connecticut, for what it's worth, is going to put more points than that on the board here. Haven't been home in a while. Last time they were home, it was a 108, 106 of substance with a line attached to it against Sacred Heart in a wild game. I could almost see Central Connecticut picking up their scoring here if I was to look at it from team total or total perspective. Not so sure that Fairfield can keep up if they get behind, which creates margin. So maybe a look there. But again, you combat those things with the fact that Fairfield does not turn it over and they can play on the glass with Central Connecticut. So it comes down to little stuff, maybe like foul trouble, et cetera, et cetera. Central to me is the better team. Central should probably score points here, but I don't trust them to really separate and create huge margin against this team, which, if nothing else, if you had described Fairfield, if nothing else, they're kind of gritty. They just don't shoot it well enough at this point in time. And Central plays pretty good defense for that level of, basketball. So I'm probably at a standstill here with no real selection, but I guess allegiance, even though Fairfield is way closer to home, allegiance would probably be with my buddy and my brother-in-law who both graduated CCSU.
Yeah, you make a great point about Fairfield and sort of their lack of shooting. I actually played against Fairfield successfully, maybe about 10 days ago. They went on the road to Merrimack, and that's a terrible matchup for them. Merrimack just sits in that Joe Gallo tough zone, and you have to shoot over it. And that was a really bad matchup for them. The Manhattan Fairfield game that you referenced in our last breakdown, that was a pretty good game. Could have gone either way, and that was one of those things where it's like Fairfield, I feel like it was not able to fully exploit like Manhattan's lack of depth in that game, and so Manhattan was able to play their starters pretty much the whole game, and that's a pretty good starting five. It's the depth that kills them. CCSU can defend, but they play mostly man. As far as I'm pretty sure Sellers usually has kind of a, more traditional man defense with a couple of usually bigs like that are good shot blockers, good rebounders, kind of rim protectors. That actually might not be the worst thing for Fairfield because they are gritty, Rob. That was probably the best way to describe them. They're a scrappy team. They can go off the dribble a little bit. And like that makes me think that maybe they hang around here. You're talking about 5.5 or 6 points. Kind of reminds me, I cashed in. So someone pointed out Central Connecticut's schedule this year has been almost all road games. They go up and play a lot of bye games as well. And then recently they've been out on the road just to some smaller Northeast schools. They came out to Binghamton last weekend. Believe they played at Northeastern before that. So they've actually only played one Division I opponent at home so far this year. That was Sacred Heart. And that was a 108-106 OT thriller. I ended up on the right side of that game with Sacred Heart plus 3.5. Central Connecticut State ended up hitting a jumper in OT, I believe, to win that game. My gut says this could be a similar game. I don't think you're going not from a scoring standpoint, not scoring in the hundreds, but kind of tight. Neither team can really pull away. And I think if that's the case, I think I'd prefer to have those points with Fairfield if I had to bet this game. Bayou says that, the only Division I opponent that CCSU has played at home this year was that Sacred Heart game. Very competitive game. And I think you get another competitive one here.
And their travel, Adam, for what it's worth, Central's travel from New Britain is all those games are within like a 60-mile radius. They're not really going anywhere. They're away games, but they're not going any distance in those games.
Right.
Bus rides, I guess.
I would say recently was the most travel they've done, where they went to Northeastern up in Boston and then had to come all the way out here to Binghamton. That's where they were over the weekend. They were out here at Binghamton, and they blasted what I consider to be a bad Binghamton team. So, it should be interesting, though. I wouldn't surprise me if that game was kind of tight. All right, got some folks talking about Temple Davidson, and that's actually on a slate where there's not much in the way of like big games. I guess an A10 league contest deserves some time on the show. So this is down in North Carolina tonight. Two teams that for me have been underwhelming recent years in the A10. I don't know how Steph Curry is actively general managing when he still plays professional basketball, but he is their GM, I believe is the title they gave him. Davidson, though, had some guys out. I think they're getting healthy in time for league play. Seth Logan was one of them, that one of the guys that missed time. That's very, very important to Davidson and what they want to do and how they want to play. So I guess my first sort of thought here, Rob, was I wasn't surprised that Davidson was laying this number at home in a league game. They're kind of a team that I think I want to jump on sooner than later. Do you jump on them here against Temple in what I believe is going to be their A10 opener and could be the return of Seth Logan, who we did not see in that Mercyhurst game, and he was rumored to come back. So that's something to keep your eye on. Is Sean Logan going to play tonight for Davidson?
Yeah, and it's two different styles of basketball here where player is concerned, Adam. At Temple, you get more of the ball handling ability to get to the rim, where Davidson, Matt McKillop just picking up his father's trail and playing slow, deliberate, but really good shooting basketball. I mean, they remain a really good shooting team, Davidson. Schedule hasn't been great. Ranked in the when I looked this morning, I think I had 279 and maybe in the 280s for Temple. They were comparable. Let's put it that way. Schedule-wise, they were comparable. So there's no real edge there. But Davidson has shot it well. It's basically their trademark, their blueprint: play slow, make hit threes, play the system. You're not really going to get a lot off the dribble into the rim. The problem for Temple is they've just played zero defense all season long. It's just not a good defensive team. I can see offensive advantages for Temple in quickness, and maybe that type of getting to the foul line, getting to the rim, etc. But when it comes to the other end of the floor, the defensive end, I just think that, Davidson, we talk about defenses that grind teams down. Offensive styles can grind a team down. And to ask Temple to play defense 25, 28 seconds into a shot clock, I just don't think that they're capable of doing that against Davidson here. However, you're getting points. Just trying to check the number here as we speak. You're going to take 5.5 points in a game that's going to be limited possessions with a team that I do think can find their way to the rim and to the free throw line, and they shoot threes really well. So it's an interesting matchup. If I had to, I think the money's correct. I'm betting this thing under. It's all the way down to 144. Probably lost your number. 148 was the opener. And at 5.5, I just don't know which way to look. My problem with 5.5 is this. I think it's competitive, but I think Davidson can stretch it on the free throw line if they're ahead at the end. And you just hate to be in that situation where you're, within 4 as an underdog and you have to foul score, and you wind up losing by 7. So I probably wouldn't play side. And perhaps the total, the good number is already gone. But still, it should be a lower scoring game. Davidson just doesn't let things get out of hand.
Yeah, so I want to talk about Logan for a second because I really do think that his inclusion on the team is massive for them going forward. Now, he's played in 5 games this year, but to my knowledge, he's been pretty much battling whatever injury has ailed him since before the season even started. So yes, he's played in 5 games, but I mean, a couple of them were I remember he got out on the floor in that MTE against Utah State for a couple possessions. Then he was done for the game. I don't think he's played since then. He's a 6'10" big, and Davidson has another one. So Ian Plateau is the other one that would almost be in a little bit of a timeshare. Plateau's a 7-footer, and they kind of would play them not at the same time, but it's one's going to play 15 to 20 minutes. The other's going to play 15 to 20 minutes. That's kind of what Plateau's played this year. Those are his minutes. Seems to be 15 minutes a game. So the problem is once he's off the floor, they don't have the other big. And the other thing, I believe, and I'm just going off memory, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that the goal was to have Logan back for A10 play. And so this is, in fact, the A10 opener for both of these teams. And he hasn't, they haven't even chanced it in recent games. I think their chancing it was, hey, let's see if he can play a little bit in the MTE. Didn't go well. And then it was all right, our next few games are games we should win without him. Citadel, the St. Mary's game, I don't think they ever truly expected to win that game. Mercyhurst, NCAA, let's shut him down until league play. If he's out there, that to me is a considerable bump for Dayton. I would probably consider the Dayton side of that. Davidson, the Wildcats. I would consider the Davidson side if Sean Logan shows up in that starting 5 tonight. Okay. Let's go to you, Rob. This is Jose asks for Drake Murray State, and you are the Missouri Valley guy on this show. That one's right in your wheelhouse. So I'm gonna take a break from talking for a second because I've been yapping a lot here with these small Northeastern schools and give you the floor. Drake Murray State, Missouri Valley Conference play tonight, getting going.
All right. So first reaction here, and this was probably the first game I looked at on the card last night. Obviously, huge interest in it. First reaction, initial reaction, just general thought is that Drake is not the same team. Certainly not the same style. Eric Henderson came from South Dakota State. He plays a totally different way than Drake is accustomed to playing. It shows up in some of these results. So my first thought is to play against or to fade Drake immediately until they get their feet underneath them, so to speak, and understand who they are and what they're going to be doing. And Murray State's not an ideal opponent to start your season with. Ryan Miller's crew actually has it going pretty well right now. Played a high-scoring George Washington team, won that game on a neutral, whacked Morehead State, which they were supposed to do, and then came back. Hey, listen, Akron and John Gross is a really good team, and Murray beat them by 15 points the other day. They've got offensive capabilities, and they play at a transitional pace that Henderson is trying to kind of convert Drake into, but they're not there yet. To me, this game is at home at Murray. I think it's probably one of the worst teams or matchups that Drake could have had to start the season. I think when they rematch January 21st, over a month from now, in Drake, maybe it's a different story. But right now, I'm all about Murray State. Their ability to score, their ability to defend, their ability to shoot. And they crash the boards from the offensive perspective. And I like a team that knows what they're doing at this point in time versus a team that honestly is still in somewhat of an identity. I don't want to call it crisis. Let's call it switch. Identity switch.
Crisis I think crisis is accurate.
Well,
I think crisis is a good.
Let's go ahead and use crisis then. I don't really like the Drake side at this point in time. So for me, it's Murray State. It'll make the card today for sure in some capacity. I don't know how strongly I'll play it, but I will be playing the Murray State side.
Rob, the reason I think crisis was an accurate sort of way to talk about Drake is Owen Larson came back 2 games ago. So Owen Larson is the highest rated player on this roster by far. If you buy into Evan Maya's BPR ratings, like player ratings, Owen Larson is far and away Drake's highest rated player. Now, Owen Larson comes over with Eric Henderson from South Dakota State, and by all accounts was supposed to be their best player going into the year. Now, he gets hurt. He finally made his season debut, I believe, off the bench against UAB, only played 11 minutes. What's more concerning to me is the 21 minutes he played over the weekend against North Dakota State that were largely ineffective. I caught as much of that game as I could because I was interested to see what Drake looked like upon his actual return. And very passive, very much a facilitator, only attempted 3 shots. I mean, he is a guard, had 5 assists, but to me, that you got to get more out of him in 21 minutes on the floor, where otherwise it kind of looks like a net negative. And so I think you see this open 7.5. I'm certain that someone out there is going to bet Drake today, and their reasoning for betting Drake is going to be like, well, Owen Larson's back. But like, he's now played 30 minutes. He hasn't looked very back to me, Rob. He didn't really do anything. So like, yeah, he's back as in he's out on the floor, but he didn't do anything. So I'm kind of with you. I think Murray State would be the look. Because I don't think he's adding to the number at all right now.
And I would say this, I talk about this often with our colleague Ski Profit when we do NBA. Reintegrating a star player into a lineup is never easy. It just doesn't become cohesive overnight. And you're talking about Larson playing with new teammates all over the place. You know, you played with South Dakota. That was a good rhythm team. It's not the same. It probably takes time. That's why I was saying before that maybe in the January 21st rematch, we see a little better version of Drake. But I don't like the fact that they open with Murray. It's just a bad league opponent to have to open with on the road. So, again, just to further your point, I feel like Murray State's the proper side here.
Steve Duke says, y'all talked me out of the Drake play. I'm passing on that. Now, listen, I mean, you never know what's going to happen, but that's also part of the reason for this show. I know a lot of people that show up to watch us are really trying to handicap the games themselves. I would say that's where we add the most value. Rob Vino, I will let people know that if you just want picks, if you're just looking for picks, we got picks, and those picks are at WagerTalk. There's always good specials. there's almost never a scenario where you have to pay full price. The full court package gets you, I think, 3 days at a pretty big discount. Rob and I will do the weekend special pretty much every weekend this year. We're going to have a scenario where you can get mine and Rob's plays for the same price for the whole weekend. The way that the two of us bet will almost never be on the same thing. So I don't think there's ever going to be a scenario where we're either against each other or even on the same side with the volume over the weekend and the way we both bet. So, that's where you can get the picks. But this show is probably more geared toward helping you do your own handicapping and just giving you the info you need to make a bet. And so that's what we're trying to do here. And hopefully we talk you off a loser. Hopefully the racers race away with this one. And we saved you some coin right there. Rob, it is 10:51. Is it okay if I put you on the spot for your parlay leg right now?
Absolutely. I probably could have gone 5 or 6 minutes ago, but let's go ahead and backtrack because I scanned the board. And yesterday, you know what, Adam? Yesterday, before I made my play, I said it was down to 3 things. I could have picked any of them. Cincinnati team total went over. The Alabama South Florida game, full game, went over. And I landed on NC State team total, which went over. Today, there's a couple of things I was looking at to choose from. The second of which, guys, would have been this William and Mary game. In fact, that's going to be the play. The second of which was the St. Joe's team total against Delaware State, which I think might be a little bit underpriced. Do with that what you want. But for the parlay purposes, we talked about this game already. The pace is going to be so rapid here. William and Mary's team total is 90.5. It's a team that's accustomed under Brian Earl into getting into that territory. As Adam said, last year, underpriced. It kind of like, I almost feel like bookmakers, Adam, I'm going to go back to something you said earlier about slow to react to Brian Earl and William and Mary as far as totals are concerned. It seems like they were quicker odds makers or bettors to react to IU Indy, which now we see coming back to earth and a lot of unders in that case. I don't think that's the situation here with two teams that want to get up and down. It's the preferred pace. A lot of bucket getters on the floor here. Lots of opportunities. So I'm going to play William and Mary's team total up and over 90.5.
William and Mary, that's up and over 90.5. You know what's interesting about that just point in general? So something Brian Earl said a couple of years ago, going into the year, that he had a really good Cornell team that ultimately probably got him this job. He talked about being so excited that he had guys that were in year 2 and year 3, because he straight up came out and he said, not only is my system tough in year 1, but these guys have no idea what they're getting in for from a conditioning standpoint to play the way I want them to play. And he referenced the Cornell team from the year prior, totally like flaming out in February. And he was just like, their conditioning wasn't good enough to play the whole season. I do think you maybe saw that a little bit with William and Mary. Going off memory, going back to last year, they started to sort of flame out in February, and they weren't putting up the big numbers, and they weren't winning games like at the rate they were early in the season. And I'll just attribute that to Brian Earl's crazy style, press the whole game. We're flying up and down the floor. We're going to fire up a 3. It's not, you need a year, I think, just to figure out like, oh shit, like I better get in shape over the summer, right? Because that asks a lot. And so so 2 things that help you out here, Rob. One, it's mid-December. They're not tired yet. They haven't hit the gauntlet of league games to this point. And 2, maybe they're just a little bit better conditioned, so they are going to be able to play their style. And you should see them sort of realize their potential more, which would be, in this case, probably hitting that team total over. So I am very much with you on the William and Mary look. And I'll just go ahead.
This happens a lot here, Adam. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this happens a lot where you'll say something, and guys get used to us doing this throughout the season, but you'll say something that triggers a thought in my head that I just got to bring up. You talked about conditioning with William and Mary. They kind of slacked off scoring-wise. The same exact thing happened, and not that the team wasn't used to it, but I want to just project ahead here for this year. We do that a little bit on this show too. Bucky McMillan's Samford team last year, just from a guy who kept betting Samford team total over, plays a relatively fast style. Samford was racking up numbers like crazy until mid-February inside conference, and then all of a sudden their results became very sporadic. Lower scoring, more missed shots. I'm like, what is I had a client actually DM me last year saying, what's wrong with Samford? And it could possibly be the same thing. Only reason I bring it up is because Bucky McMillan now at Texas A&M, and Texas A&M looks great scoring the basketball early on, but they're going to go through the rigors of an SEC season. It could be a few weeks from now where we're able to capitalize on higher team totals with Texas A&M that are going to stay under simply because that factor of being worn down by a 34-game college basketball season affects them where scoring is concerned.
It's what we're here for. I mean, those are the types of things like that might help you cash a ticket a few weeks from now, and you got it here free. So, but by all means, those are the types of thoughts we want on this show. I at the gun, before we recap the parlay, we got about 5 minutes left. I'll talk about the 11 a.m. tip. I don't have anything crazy here from this was not one that I even considered playing today, but you do have an 11 a.m. tip. Charleston Southern, North Florida. I'm assuming this is at the Buck Dome, they call this place. It's not really a dome. I mean, maybe the structure is a dome. It's a very small gym that they play in down at Charleston Southern, which, fun fact, Rob, is in North Charleston. Charleston Southern is in North Charleston, for those of you keeping score at home. I like this team, though. I could only lay the 10.5. You could have had 9.5 early this morning. I'm a fan of the Bucks. I think they are a sleeper in their league. Alon Summer is still there from last year. They got some guys that can score. So as it stands right now, there are some 10s out there. Again, not my strongest sort of take on the day, but it does start in 4 minutes. If they get off to a slow start, maybe a live bet on Charleston Southern, but that's about all I have. Anything for you, North Florida, Chuck South, as the kids like to call it.
Yeah, I will say this. It didn't go out as a client play early this morning. I was real quick to this, but I did make a personal bet. I do have bet action on this game. Total over. I got a way better number, guys, 60.5 earlier this morning. You're up to 163 now, probably because it is an 11 a.m. standalone game where everybody's going to just bet the early game. But I did, for what it's worth, for anybody who wants to take the bad end of the line now and just tail, I'm on Charleston Southern, North Florida over. Should be a high scoring game. Boy, North Florida cannot defend worth it. It's a team that used to be in the A-Sun with Belmont when my son was there, and North Florida was, halfway decent, but recent years, all high scoring, no real defense. I bet it over 60.5. Like I say, do with that what you will.
Yeah, North Florida is a big fade. Not that there's going to be much value doing it, but like the architect of that Birds of Trey sort of system that they had going there is now at Kansas State. This is not a good basketball team this year. So for me, could only fade them. Numbers, obviously, they're asking you to pay a premium on the home favorite in the 11 a.m. standalone tip, but might not matter. Because I think Charleston Southern's a lot better, and if they can really get going, and let's put it this way, if your team total hits, that they're probably going to cover that number. I feel like they run and hide in this game at some point.
Somebody in the comment section, Adam, yesterday or the day before had a angle on road teams in early starts. Just bet against the road teams and play these home.
Yeah, Jim Root on the show was saying that. He was saying
That's
that
right.
the home teams have, like, anecdotally, like, just not having the facts in front of him, but he was just saying from memory that he felt like a lot of those home teams just roll in this sort of 11 a.m. tip window.
We listen around here, Jim.
Yeah. Real quick, we'll break down just recap the parlay. We got about 1 minute left, and we have to wrap it up. So I'm going to, as the kids say, Rob, I'm going to stand on business. I'm staying with Jackson State. I don't agree with that move at all. Pinnacle is back to 8, but the market is still at 8.5 everywhere. Wouldn't be surprised if that's back down in the 7.5, 7 range by tip-off. I think that could be a little bit of a fake. So for the show, for the parlay, it's going to stay 8.5. But I did give that out to clients +7 for a 3% play. So hopefully the number doesn't matter here. I'm going to go with Jackson State +8.5. And then we're going to go with Rob Vino's team total over. William and Mary over 90.5. We cashed the parlay yesterday to put us plus 1.46 units on the season. So we're back in the plus, and we're going to stay there. We're going to hit this 2-teamer. Win or lose, though, we'll be back tomorrow. to wrap up the week, 10 a.m. for more Full Court Press. Have a great day, everybody. We will see you guys in the morning.